We're taught to run from pain, to numb it, avoid it, escape it. But pain, at its core, is information. It's your soul trying to speak, trying to tell you that something needs your attention. So, when we face it, rather than flee it, pain becomes a compass, not a curse. The question isn't, how do I get rid of this? It's, what is this trying to teach me? Pain is not your enemy. It's a messenger, sometimes harsh, sometimes relentless, but always meaningful. And yet, most people treat pain like a defect in the human experience, as if it were an error to be corrected or a glitch in the system. But pain is not a malfunction. It's a signal, a deep, instinctive communication from your body, your psyche, or your spirit, alerting you to the fact that something matters, that something needs your attention. When a child touches a hot stove, pain teaches them instantly, don't do that again. But not all pain is physical. Emotional and psychological pain is far more complex. It doesn't always come with a clear cause or a visible burn. And that's what makes it so difficult to face. We don't know where to put it. So instead of listening to it, we run. We distract ourselves. We rationalize it, medicate it, scroll past it, anything but feel it. But avoidance doesn't erase pain. It amplifies it. What you resist, as Carl Jung warned, persists. Psychologically speaking, pain is an entry point into self-awareness. Neuroscience tells us that the brain processes emotional pain in many of the same regions as physical pain. That means heartbreak, shame, and loss are not just in your head. They are embodied experiences. And just like physical wounds, they need proper care. You don't heal a broken leg by pretending it's fine and walking on it. Likewise, you don't heal emotional wounds by suppressing them and pretending you're strong. Philosophically, this is not a new idea. The Stoics believed that pain was a necessary part of becoming fully human. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and philosopher, wrote in his Meditations that we are harmed more by our perception of suffering than by the suffering itself. It's why pain, it's not destroys. In other words, it's not pain that destroys us. It's the belief that pain shouldn't exist, that it's meaningless, that it's unjust. But if you can shift your orientation, if you can see pain not as a punishment, but as a prompt, everything changes. Pain demands presence. It strips away pretense. You don't feel superior when you're suffering. You feel human. And that's where the transformation begins. Because in that stripped down moment, raw, vulnerable, unguarded, you are finally in touch with something real. And reality, however painful, is always the starting point for genuine growth. It's easy to love life when everything is going well. But your relationship with pain is what determines the depth of your character. Can you face it without flinching? Can you sit with it long enough to hear what it's trying to tell you? Because it will speak if you stop running. And what it tells you might not be easy, but it will be true. And truth, even when it hurts, is always what sets you free. And Shul, so don't silence the messenger. Listen, let pain be your teacher, not your master. And remember this, the wound that hurts the most may be the one that wakes you up to who you really are. Not everyone who suffers becomes stronger. Some become bitter, resentful, or numb. But the ones who transform are those who choose to rebuild. Pain is the furnace of identity. It burns away illusion and ego, leaving only what's essential. If you survive it with your heart open, you don't just heal, you become more than you were before. When life hurts, the instinct is to retreat, to curl inward, to shield yourself, to wait until the pain passes. But the truth is, most of the time, it doesn't just pass. Pain isn't always something that fades with time. Sometimes it stays until it's acknowledged. And what many people don't realize is that the real turning point in suffering doesn't come when the pain disappears. It comes when you stop waiting to feel strong and start acting in spite of your weakness. This is a principle that runs deep in both psychology and philosophy. The idea that courage is not the absence of fear or pain, but the decision to move forward anyway. And this applies directly to the idea of choosing how you respond to suffering. Because there's a choice, there always is. Pain may not be optional, but passivity is. Resentment is. Bitterness is. Giving up is. And once you understand that, something powerful begins to shift. Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist who survived Auschwitz, said it best. So 9. Everything can be taken from a man, but one thing, the last of the dot. Human freedoms to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. And that freedom, that sliver of agency, is often the first step toward healing. Because even when the situation is unbearable, your orientation toward it is not fixed. You can decide what it will mean. You can assign purpose to it. And in doing so, you reclaim some sense of control. Psychologically, this taps into a concept called reframing. Cognitive behavioral therapy, one of the most evidence-based approaches in psychology, often starts here. So when you reframe pain, when you look at it not as a curse, but as a catalyst, it doesn't necessarily remove the suffering, but it alters your relationship with it. Suddenly, you're not just a victim of life's cruelty, you're an active participant in your own recovery. That shift in mindset changes the emotional weight of suffering. And it's not just theory, it's practical. It works. But let's be clear, that this doesn't mean romanticizing trauma. It doesn't mean pretending everything happens for a reason. Some things are just cruel. Some things break you in ways that words can't fully capture. But the question isn't, was this fair? The question is, what will I do with this? And that's where responsibility, not the kind of responsibility that blames the victim, but the kind that empowers the survivor. The kind that says, this may not be my fault, but it is my future. And I will not hand it over to despair. It's not dramatic. It's not cinematic. Often, it looks like very small decisions made in very quiet moments. Getting out of bed when you'd rather stay under the covers. Reaching out when everything in you says isolate. Telling the truth, even when your voice shakes. Those moments build momentum. And that momentum becomes the architecture of a different kind of life. So when it hurts, don't wait to feel brave. Choose to act, even if it's imperfect, even if it's barely a whisper. Because in that choice, no matter how small, is the beginning of strength. What you do when you hurt the most is what defines who you become next. Isolation is a liar. No one foxing. When you're hurting, it whispers, no one would understand. No one would care. But the truth is, connection is not weakness. Asking for help is not failure. Pain shared is pain lessened. Even one person sitting with you in the dark can be the beginning of your return to light. When we're in pain, one of the most dangerous lies we tend to believe is that we're alone in it and that no one would understand, that our darkness is too deep or too complicated to be shared. And yet, the paradox is this: the very thing we think will protect us, isolation, often becomes the very thing that breaks us further. Human beings are relational by nature. Our nervous systems are literally wired for connection. From infancy, our survival depends on it, on the attuned gaze of a caregiver, on being held, on being mirrored. And as we grow, the need doesn't go away. It evolves. We stop reaching for a parent's hand and start reaching for meaning, reaching for someone to witness our lives and say, I see you, you matter. The irony is that in our culture, especially one driven by performance and appearances, it's easy to lose that basic human thread. We show our highlight reels, we curate our identities, and we hide our wounds, assuming they make us weak, when in fact they're often where our deepest humanity lies. From the psychological, one of the strongest buffers against trauma is not avoidance, or even strength in the traditional sense. It's relational support. People who have at least one person they can be emotionally honest with are significantly more resilient. Not because the pain is less real, but because it becomes shared. And that's the thing, pain that is witnessed transforms. It may not go away, but it shifts shape. It becomes bearable. It becomes meaningful, but this doesn't mean vulnerability should be reckless. Not everyone has earned the right to hear your story. There's a difference between transparency and exposure. True vulnerability is measured, it's intentional, and it begins with the courage to take a risk, not a risk that the pain will disappear, but a risk that it can be held by someone other than you. That act alone can be profoundly healing. Philosophers like Martin Buber have argued that true existence is found in the I thou relationship, where we encounter the other not as an object to be managed, but as a person to be met. When we enter this space, especially in moments of suffering, we aren't just soothed, we're recognized. And recognition is a form of restoration. To be seen is to begin remembering who you are beyond what's hurting. Still, some of you have tried this before and were met with silence or betrayal. I won't pretend that risk isn't real, but I'll tell you this, the alternative to stay hidden, to carry it all alone, is spiritual starvation. This, one person who truly listens can reorient your entire worldview. They don't even need to have the answers. They just need to stay. So when it hurts, don't disappear. Reach. Even if your voice shakes, even if you're not sure what to say, because the healing often begins not when the pain ends, but when someone finally hears it. But here's it. The hand you extend could be the bridge back to yourself. Don't let silence have the last word. Pain can make life feel like it's come to a halt, but the most powerful stories are forged in crisis. Your past may be wounded, but your future isn't written yet. This moment of suffering, as raw and unfair as it feels, might be the very chapter that gives your life its deepest meaning. When you're in the depths of pain, everything inside you tells you to retreat, to shut down, to curl inward and wait for the storm to pass. That impulse is deeply human. It's protective. But if you're not careful, what starts as self-preservation can slowly become self-abandonment. You stop trying, you stop showing up, and without realizing it, you surrender your agency to the very thing that hurt you. But here's the truth. Pain is not just something that happens to us. It's also something we respond to. And in that response, no matter how small, we reclaim a measure of control. It doesn't have to be a grand gesture. It can be as simple as getting out of bed when everything in you says not to. Making your bed, stepping outside, sending a message, drinking water. These actions might seem insignificant, almost insulting in the face of deep suffering, but they matter, not because they fix the pain, but because they remind you that you're not powerless within it. The Gowing Antilles. This is where the concept of responsibility enters, not as blame, but as the discipline of choosing who you want to become, even in darkness. Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor and psychiatrist, wrote, "When we are no longer able to change a situation, a challenge to change ourselves, that's not a motivational poster. That's hard philosophy. That's reality. There are moments in life when you won't be able to fix what's broken around you, but you can decide who you are within it." That's not a small thing. So, in fact, that might be the most important thing psychologically. Taking responsibility restores a sense of coherence. When you're passive, when you wait for someone else to rescue you, you start to believe the story that you have no influence, no capacity to move the needle in your own life. But when you take even the smallest deliberate step, your brain rewrites that story. You are no longer just a victim of the narrative. You are, once again, a participant in it. Now, does that mean everything gets better right away? Of course not. The truth is, some seasons of pain stretch on far longer than they should. But you don't have to wait for the pain to end before you start living again. In fearful ourselves. That's the lie we tell ourselves. Once I feel better, then I'll act. But in many cases, it's the act itself that eventually makes us feel better. Responsibility isn't about forcing yourself to be okay. It's about choosing again and again to show up broken, imperfect, grieving, but still present. Because presence matters. Movement matters. Even slow, trembling, unsure movement. It's the difference between a life that is merely endured and a life that is gradually, quietly rebuilt. So when it hurts, especially when it hurts, choose to act and then fall, because action, no matter how small, is proof that the pain hasn't won. And most people either deny their pain or drown in it. But there is a third path, redemption. You don't get to choose what hurt you, but you do get to choose what you do with it. Use it. Let it humble you, deepen you, awaken you. The wound can become the very place your purpose is born. And finally, and perhaps most paradoxically, pain has the potential to become your greatest teacher if you're willing to learn from it. That's not a romantic ideal or poetic fluff. That's a hard truth, proven over and over in psychology, in philosophy, in history. Some of the wisest people you will ever meet have walked through things that would break most. And the reason they aren't just surviving, but offering wisdom is because they listen to their pain rather than just running from it. Now, this doesn't mean glorifying suffering or pretending every wound has some divine purpose. It means recognizing that pain speaks. It reveals what matters to you. It exposes where you're vulnerable, where your values live, what you hoped for, and what you feared losing. Pain is diagnostic. It's revealing. And if you ignore it, you miss the very information that could lead to healing and growth. In Now, it's like a fire alarm. Annoying, yes, but also essential if you want to avoid burning down your life. Philosophers like Nietzsche understood this deeply. His famous quote, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how," speaks directly to this point. You can find meaning in the suffering not as justification, but as transformation. You become more than just someone who got through pain. You become someone who grew through it. And let's talk psychology. Post-traumatic growth is a well-documented phenomenon. It refers to the positive psychological change that can occur as a result of struggling with highly challenging circumstances. People often emerge with a deeper appreciation for life, stronger relationships, and a clarified sense of purpose. Not because they ignored their pain, but because they engaged it with courage and reflection. They didn't let pain harden them. They let it carve them into someone more capable, more empathetic, more resilient. But here's the key. That transformation isn't automatic. It's a choice, a process, a discipline. You can't just suffer and expect to become wise. You have to ask questions. You have to wrestle with the experience. You have to be honest with yourself about what it exposed in you, your limits, your expectations, your illusions. And then you have to build something better in its place. This is where real strength is born, not in pretending nothing hurts you, not in numbing yourself into apathy, but in facing your pain, learning from it, and using it as a catalyst to live more deliberately, more awake, more aligned with the truth. So when it hurts, don't just suffer, survive. Don't just survive, learn. Let the pain shape you into someone you wouldn't have become otherwise. Let it deepen your character, sharpen your vision, and remind you that even in your worst moments, there's a wisdom waiting to be uncovered. Because sometimes pain doesn't just break you, it rebuilds you. If you're willing to meet it with open eyes and a willing heart,